Everyone on the busy street kept walking past the old man who had just collapsed, except her. A young black girl, barely 16, dropped her school books and rushed to his side. She had no idea the fainted stranger was one of the richest billionaires in the city, and that helping him would change her life forever. It was a hot afternoon, the kind of heat that seemed to make the city itself sweat. The air shimmered above the asphalt, buses roared by with passengers crammed against the windows, and street vendors shouted as they waved chilled drinks at passers-by. People hurried along the sidewalks with umbrellas tilted against the sun, their faces weary and impatient. Amid that restless crowd, the rhythm of the street suddenly changed. A man stumbled. At first, no one paid attention. People tripped or faltered all the time. But when his knees buckled and his body collapsed hard onto the pavement, a ripple of noise spread across the sidewalk. "Someone fell," a woman gasped. Heads turned. A circle began to form around him. People craned their necks, rising on tiptoe to get a better look. The man lay motionless, his chest rising unevenly. His arm twitched once, then stilled. His expensive shoes caught the light, polished and sharp against the dusty ground. But no one looked at his shoes for long. They looked at his face, pale, sweating, lips slightly parted. Murmurs filled the air. "Is he breathing? Looks serious. Maybe he's drunk or high." A young man pulled out his phone, angling it for a video. Another woman whispered something about uploading it to social media. Most stood back, shaking their heads, unwilling to come too close. Minutes stretched. The man didn't move. His shallow breathing seemed to fade with each passing second. Yet the crowd hesitated, unsure, unwilling to act. And then, through the circle of onlookers, a girl stepped forward. Her books slipped from her arms and scattered on the ground, but she didn't stop to pick them up. She dropped to her knees beside the stranger. "Sir? Sir, can you hear me?" Her voice cut through the chatter. She pressed her hand against his shoulder and shook gently. No response. His skin was clammy, his body limp. "Please, stay with me," she whispered, though he couldn't hear. The crowd exchanged glances. Some muttered that she should leave him alone. Others looked impressed, but did not join her. The girl swallowed her fear and remembered what she had once been taught in school. Check for breathing. Keep the airway clear. Her teacher's instructions played in her head like a recording. Leaning close, she felt faint warmth against her cheek. His breathing was ragged, unsteady. But there. Relief surged through her, but it was short-lived. His pulse was weak. Too weak. "Somebody call an ambulance," she shouted, raising her head. A few people shuffled uncomfortably. One man shrugged. "I think someone already did." Still, she stayed. She adjusted his position, rolling him gently onto his side to make sure his airway remained open. She placed her ear near his mouth again, counting the seconds between each shallow breath. The heat bore down mercilessly. Sweat dripped from her forehead onto the pavement. The man's breathing rattled faintly, a sound that made her stomach knot. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. If he stopped breathing, what would she do? "Why's that girl touching him?" a voice whispered from the crowd. "She's braver than the rest of us," another admitted. "Or foolish," someone else muttered. But she ignored them. All she saw was the stranger's face, pale and drawn, his closed eyelids twitching as though caught in a bad dream. Seconds dragged like hours. She pressed 2 fingers against his neck, willing herself to feel the faint beat of life. It was there, fragile, as though at any moment it might disappear. Her hands trembled. "Hold on," she murmured. "Please hold on." Finally, the distant sound of sirens broke through the street noise. Heads turned, the wail grew louder, cutting through traffic until an ambulance swerved to the curb. 2 paramedics jumped out with a stretcher, their movements brisk and practiced. They pushed through the crowd and knelt beside the girl. "What happened?" one asked. I found him like this," she stammered. "He collapsed. He's breathing, but it's weak." The paramedics moved quickly, checking his vitals, attaching monitors, lifting him with careful efficiency. One gave a brief nod toward the girl. "You did the right thing. You kept him stable. Good work." She exhaled shakily, only then realizing how tense her body had been. The medics loaded the man into the ambulance. The doors slammed shut, the siren wailed again, and just like that, he was gone. The crowd began to disperse, their curiosity satisfied, the spectacle over. Phones went back into pockets. Conversation shifted, footsteps faded. Soon the street returned to its normal rhythm as though nothing had happened. The girl remained kneeling for a moment longer, her hands pressed against the ground where he had lain. Slowly, she stood and looked around. The circle of people who had once watched in fascination now barely glanced at her. Some avoided her eyes entirely, embarrassed they had done nothing. Her books lay scattered across the pavement. She bent to pick them up. The notebook on top had torn at the spine, pages bent and dirty from the ground. She stacked them carefully against her chest, her fingers brushing away the dust. The ambulance was gone now, swallowed by traffic. The faint echo of its siren still hung in the distance. She stared down the road for a long moment, her mind replaying the sight of his pale face, his shallow breaths, the lifeless weight of his body in her arms. Was he going to be all right? Would he survive? Who was he? Questions pressed against her thoughts, but no answers came. To her, he was just a stranger, someone who had collapsed on the street on a hot afternoon. Nothing more. She sighed. Her knees ached from kneeling on the hard pavement, and her uniform clung uncomfortably to her back. With the weight of her books once more against her chest, she turned and began walking home. The street around her buzzed with life again. Vendors calling out, cars honking, pedestrians weaving through traffic. No one looked at her twice. To them, the incident was over, forgotten. But for her, it lingered. She couldn't shake the image of his face, the weakness of his pulse beneath her fingers, the desperate prayer she had whispered for him to hold on. She walked slowly, replaying every second of the encounter, as though afraid she had missed something important. By the time she reached her neighborhood, the sun had begun to dip, casting long shadows across the dusty ground. She stepped through the gate of her home, still clutching her torn notebook. For a moment, she considered telling her mother what had happened, that she had helped a stranger who might have been dying, that she had knelt in the heat while the crowd just watched. But she hesitated. The words felt heavy, strange, so she said nothing. She placed her books on the table, washed her hands, and quietly went about the evening chores. Yet even as the night deepened, the image of that man remained vivid in her mind. She didn't know his name, didn't know his story. She only knew she had been there when no one else had stepped forward. As she lay in bed later, staring at the cracked ceiling, she whispered one last thought to herself. I hope he's alive. And with that, she closed her eyes, unaware that her simple act of kindness on that hot afternoon was about to change her life forever. The night after the incident felt unusually long. Maya lay awake on her thin mattress, the ceiling fan clicking faintly above her, stirring hot air that barely cooled her restless skin. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the stranger's face, pale, fragile, so close to slipping away. She had whispered to herself, I hope he's alive, but even as she drifted into uneasy sleep, doubt gnawed at her. What if he hadn't made it? What if, despite the ambulance, he had taken his last breath that very day? By morning, the memory had begun to feel distant, like a shadow clinging to her thoughts. She pushed it aside as she prepared for school, washed her face with cold water, and tied her shoelaces. She tried to convince herself it was over. He was just a stranger after all. Life had to go on. But destiny had other plans. The following afternoon, Maya returned from school, dragging her tired feet along the familiar dirt road that led to her small compound. The sun beat down mercilessly, and she shifted her stack of books from one arm to the other. She was thinking about homework, about the water she'd need to fetch before evening, when she noticed something strange. A black car. It was unlike anything she had ever seen parked in her neighborhood, sleek, glossy, with tinted windows that reflected the sunlight like mirrors. Its polished tires looked foreign on the dusty street. Two men in dark suits stood by the car, their eyes scanning the area with the sharpness of hawks. Maya slowed. Her pulse quickened. Cars like that did not belong here. Men like that never came here. As she approached the gate of her home, one of the suited men stepped forward. His presence was intimidating. Tall, broad-shouldered, his posture too straight, too professional. "Are you Maya Johnson?" he asked, his deep voice cutting through the hum of the street. Maya froze, her grip tightening on her books. For a split second, panic flared in her chest. How do they know my name? Yes, she stammered. The man nodded once, then gestured toward the car. Our employer would like to see you. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "See me? Why, I didn't do anything wrong." The other man stepped closer, his tone gentler. "It's nothing bad. In fact, it's the opposite. 2 days ago, you helped someone very important. He wants to thank you." Maya blinked, confused. Her mind scrambled back to the fainted stranger. Could it be? No, impossible. The man she had saved had looked ordinary enough, though well-dressed. Certainly not someone with bodyguards and luxury cars. I don't understand," she whispered. "You will," the first man replied. "Please, come with us." Her mother stepped out of the house just then, a basket of laundry balanced on her hip. She stopped abruptly at the sight of the car and the suited men. Fear flashed across her face. "What's going on here?" "Ma'am," one of the men said politely, "we mean no harm. Your daughter did something remarkable. A man she helped has asked to see her." Her mother's eyes darted between them and Maya. "What man? What is this about?" Maya's lips parted, but she had no explanation to give. The second man added, "He's safe, ma'am. We'll bring her back after the meeting. It won't take long." Her mother hesitated, then looked at Maya. "Do you know these people?" Maya shook her head slowly. "But I think it's about the man who fainted, the one I helped." Her mother frowned, clearly uncertain, but finally gave a small nod. "Be careful," she said firmly. Maya clutched her books to her chest and allowed the men to guide her toward the waiting car. The tinted window lowered just enough to reveal plush leather seats inside. She slid in nervously, her heartbeat wild, and the car door shut with a soft, final click. The engine purred to life and they pulled away from the narrow street, leaving her mother staring after them. The ride was silent. Maya sat stiffly, her eyes darting to the suits seated across from her. The city outside blurred past, unfamiliar streets and towering buildings replacing the crowded roads she knew. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the car slowed in front of a tall, glass-covered building. Its polished surface reflected the sky, looming high above the busy avenue. A uniformed guard waved them through. Maya's mouth went dry. This was no ordinary visit. The car stopped at a private entrance and the men led her inside. Cool air washed over her as she stepped into a marble-floored lobby. Everything gleamed, shiny, modern, and intimidating. She had never set foot anywhere like it. They guided her into an elevator. The ride upward was smooth but tense. Her ears popped slightly as they climbed floor after floor until finally the doors slid open to reveal a quiet, luxurious corridor. At the end of the hall, a door stood ajar. One of the men gestured for her to enter. Maya hesitated, her palms damp, her knees trembling. Taking a deep breath, she stepped inside. The room was bright, with sunlight pouring through wide windows. A hospital bed stood near the center, surrounded by elegant furniture that looked more like a hotel suite than a medical space. And there he was. The man she had seen collapse on the street lay propped against pillows, an IV tube in his arm, his face pale but alive. His eyes lifted as she entered, and a faint smile curved across his lips. "It's you," he said, his voice hoarse but steady. "The girl who didn't walk away." Maya stopped in her tracks. "You're alive." He gave a small laugh. "Thanks to you, yes." He extended a hand weakly. "Come closer. Don't be afraid." She stepped forward hesitantly. Her heart pounded as she took his hand. His grip, though weak, was warm. "I owe you my life," he said. "If you hadn't acted when you did, I might not be here now." Maya swallowed, unsure what to say. I just did what I could." His smile widened slightly. "That's more than most people did. They stood and watched. You acted." Silence stretched for a moment. Then he said softly, "My name is Victor Harrington." The name meant nothing to Maya at first. She blinked, confused. "I don't know who that is." The man chuckled faintly, though the effort seemed to tire him. "That's refreshing. Everyone else does. I'm a businessman. Some call me wealthy. Others call me powerful. But none of that mattered on that street. There, I was just a man about to die. And you were the only one who remembered I was human." Maya's eyes widened as the realization hit her. A billionaire, the kind of person whose name filled newspapers, though she had never paid attention. And he was thanking her. She shook her head in disbelief. "I didn't know. Victor squeezed her hand gently. "You didn't know, and that's what makes it extraordinary. You helped me not for who I am, but because it was right. And for that, I will never forget you." Maya's throat tightened. She had no words, only a flood of confusion, disbelief, and a strange sense of awe. The man who had collapsed in her arms was not just anyone. He was Victor Harrington, one of the richest men in the city, and he was telling her that her small act of kindness had saved his life. Maya left the suite in a daze that day, escorted back to the waiting car. The city outside looked different now, as though tinted by the weight of what she had just discovered. Her life had not changed yet, but she could feel it. Something had shifted, something irreversible. And though she didn't know it, this was only the beginning. Maya thought the story was over. She had helped a man on the street, the ambulance had taken him away, and life for her would continue as usual. At least, that's what she believed. But the universe was already moving pieces she couldn't see, and the simple kindness of one schoolgirl was about to disturb the balance of powerful lives. The next morning, Maya woke up to the sound of her alarm crackling on the small wooden table beside her bed. The single-room apartment she shared with her mother smelled faintly of kerosene from the old stove. Her uniform, still slightly damp from the night's washing, hung on the chair. She dressed quickly, stuffing her worn notebooks into her school bag. As she adjusted the strap, her mother's voice came from the corner. "Don't be late, Maya. Exams are coming soon," her mother reminded, her tired eyes softening into a smile. "I won't, Mama," Maya answered, forcing a small smile of her own. She didn't tell her mother about yesterday's incident. What was the point? To her, it was just a moment that came and went. But as Maya stepped out into the sunlit street, she noticed something odd. People were gathered around the newsstand at the corner, craning their necks to read the headlines. "The city's billionaire collapses on street," blared the bold black letters. Maya froze. She didn't even need to see the photograph of the ambulance to know who it was. It was him, the man she had helped. Her heart skipped a beat. So he wasn't just anyone. He wasn't just some old man with gray hair and a suit. He was important. He was powerful. And suddenly, her small act of kindness felt like something much larger. At school, whispers flew between the students. Everyone was talking about it. "They say he's still in the hospital. Imagine a man like that fainting in public. Do you think someone poisoned him?" Maya sat quietly at her desk, listening, her mind drifting back to the moment she held his shoulder and checked if he was breathing. She wondered if he was still unconscious, if he had family, if he was even alive. By lunchtime, she had almost convinced herself to push the thought away when something unusual happened. A black car with tinted windows pulled up in front of the school. The driver stepped out, scanning the area. His sharp suit, polished shoes, and the sleekness of the car made the students gather at the windows in awe. "Who's that?" someone whispered. "Looks like security." The man spoke briefly to the school principal, who then nodded and pointed toward Maya's classroom. Maya's heart thudded in her chest as the man walked straight to her desk. "You're Maya?" he asked firmly. Every pair of eyes in the room turned to her. She swallowed hard and nodded. "You need to come with me," the man said. "Mr. Harrington's family would like to see you." The ride in the black car was surreal. Maya sat quietly, clutching her bag, while the driver made call after call in hushed tones. The city flew past the tinted windows, but she couldn't focus on anything outside. Her mind replayed the incident, trying to understand why the billionaire's family wanted to see her. Did they think she had done something wrong? Finally, the car pulled into the massive gates of a mansion so large Maya thought she had stepped into a movie. The house rose like a palace, surrounded by manicured gardens and fountains. Servants moved briskly across the grounds. Maya stared, her breath caught in her throat. She was escorted inside, her worn shoes squeaking against the marble floor. Chandeliers glittered above her, and paintings of people in gilded frames lined the walls. It was another world, one she didn't belong in. In a large drawing room, a woman sat waiting. She was elegant, dressed in a navy blue dress, her hair pulled back neatly. Her sharp eyes studied Maya the moment she entered. "You're the girl who helped my father?" the woman asked. "Yes, ma'am," Maya whispered, unsure if she should bow, curtsy, or just stand still. The woman's expression softened slightly. "You were brave. People stood and watched, but you acted. The doctors say your quick thinking kept him stable until the ambulance came. If you hadn't—" She trailed off, her voice tight. "You saved his life." Maya blinked. Saved his life? Her hands tightened around her school bag strap. She hadn't thought of it that way. She had just helped. The woman stood, extending her hand. I'm Evelyn Harrington. My father is still unconscious, but we believe he'll recover. He will want to meet you himself when he wakes up. Until then, I want to personally thank you. Maya shook her hand awkwardly, feeling the softness of skin so different from her own calloused palms. Thank you, ma'am, she said, her voice trembling. Evelyn smiled faintly, but her eyes carried something more, a mix of gratitude and calculation, as though she was already considering what this girl's presence could mean in a family as powerful as the Harringtons. Over the next few days, Maya's life began to change in subtle but undeniable ways. A small envelope arrived at her home, an anonymous payment of her school fees for the entire year. Her mother was stunned, tears filling her eyes. Maya, where did this come from? Maya hesitated, then confessed about the billionaire. Her mother gasped, placing a hand over her mouth. You mean you were the one who helped him? My child. At school, whispers followed her everywhere. Students pointed at her in the hallways. Some were curious, others jealous. She's the one who helped the billionaire. No way, someone like her? Maybe she'll get rich now. Maya tried to ignore them, but deep inside, she felt the weight of something shifting. She had stepped into a story much bigger than herself. Then, one evening, another car arrived at their home. This time, it wasn't just security. It was a man in his 50s wearing a gray suit, carrying a briefcase. He introduced himself as Mr. Lawrence, the family's attorney. Miss Maya, he began politely, sitting in their small living room that felt too cramped for his presence. Mr. Harrington has regained consciousness. He asked to see you personally. Maya's heart leapt. The man she had helped, the billionaire everyone was talking about, wanted to see her. But why? What could he possibly say to her? Her mother, though nervous, nodded. Go, Maya. It is not every day the wealthy remember the poor. Maybe this is God's plan. The next morning, Maya found herself once again at the grand Harrington estate. This time, she was led through long corridors to a room upstairs. The air smelled faintly of medicine. A nurse opened the door quietly, and there he was, the man she had saved. He looked frailer now, propped up in bed, his silver hair brushed back neatly, but his eyes were alert. Those piercing blue eyes studied her as though trying to read her soul. Maya, he said, his voice weak but steady. So you are the girl who refused to walk past me. Maya nodded nervously. Yes, sir. A small smile touched his lips. Everyone else saw me as an inconvenience, a fallen old man in the way of their busy lives. But you stopped. You cared. Do you know what that means to someone like me? Maya shook her head, not knowing what to say. The billionaire leaned back against his pillows. It means everything. You see, child, money cannot buy compassion. And in a world where everyone looks to gain something, you acted with pure kindness. He paused, his eyes misting over. I owe you my life, and I don't forget debts. Maya swallowed hard, her heart pounding. She hadn't expected this. His gratitude was one thing, but his tone carried a weight far heavier. It sounded like a promise. As she left his room that day, Evelyn caught her in the hallway. My father doesn't trust people easily, she said quietly. But he seems to trust you already. That's rare. Maya didn't know what to make of that. She just wanted to go home, return to her normal life, focus on her exams. But as she walked out of the mansion and back into the city streets, she had the sinking feeling that her life would never be normal again, because she had just stepped into the shadows of the Harrington family, and once inside, there was no way out. Maya's footsteps echoed on the pavement as she left the Harrington mansion, her school bag heavy on her shoulder. She replayed the billionaire's words in her head. I owe you my life, and I don't forget debts. What did that even mean? What could a man with billions possibly owe to a girl with nothing? By the time she reached her small apartment, the sun had already dipped behind the city skyline. Her mother was waiting at the door, her expression tight with worry. Maya, her mother said, is it true? Did he really speak to you? Yes, Maya admitted quietly. He said he doesn't forget debts. Her mother sat down heavily on the old wooden chair, her hands trembling. Child, people like him don't say things lightly. His words carry power. You must be careful. Maya nodded, though she didn't understand fully. She only knew that something larger than herself was already pulling her deeper into a world she had no business entering. The next few days passed in uneasy silence. Maya tried to focus on her exams, but whispers at school never stopped. Some classmates treated her with awe, others with scorn. She's pretending to be important now. Bet she'll forget us when she gets rich. She's just lucky. Maya ignored them, but inside doubt gnawed at her. Maybe they were right. Maybe she had stepped into something too big for her. Then, one evening, a letter arrived. Not a phone call, not a message, but an actual envelope with golden edges and the Harrington crest pressed into wax. Her mother opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a formal note written in elegant handwriting. Miss Maya, Mr. Harrington requests your presence at the family estate this Saturday evening for a private dinner. Please come dressed appropriately. A car will be sent for you at 6 p.m. Sincerely, Evelyn Harrington. Maya stared at the letter, her stomach tightening. Dinner? With them? Why? Her mother touched her shoulder. This is not ordinary, Maya. If they're inviting you like this, it means you are no longer invisible to them. You must go. Saturday came faster than Maya wanted. She wore her best dress, a simple but clean gown her mother had kept for special occasions. The black car arrived right on time, its polished surface gleaming under the streetlights. As it carried her back through the iron gates of the Harrington estate, Maya's heart pounded harder with each turn of the wheels. This time, she was led not to the hospital-like room upstairs, but to a grand dining hall lit with crystal chandeliers. The table stretched longer than her entire classroom, lined with silverware that sparkled under the lights. Servants moved quietly, setting dishes she couldn't name. At the head of the table sat Mr. Harrington himself, upright now, his strength partially restored. Evelyn was at his right, her sharp gaze fixed on Maya as she entered. Maya, Mr. Harrington greeted warmly, come sit by me. She obeyed, slipping into the chair beside him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The dinner began with small-talk questions about her school, her grades, her ambitions. Maya answered cautiously, aware that every word seemed to matter. Evelyn, meanwhile, said little, but her eyes missed nothing. Halfway through the meal, Mr. Harrington set down his glass of wine and looked directly at her. Maya, I want to ask you something, he said. His voice was calm, but the weight behind it was undeniable. Do you believe in fate? Maya blinked, unsure how to respond. I don't know, sir. Maybe. He nodded slowly. I do. I believe people cross paths for reasons greater than themselves. You saved my life. That was not chance. That was fate. And fate must be honored. Evelyn shifted in her seat, her fork clinking against her plate. Father, she said softly, perhaps this is too much for her. She's just a child. But Mr. Harrington shook his head. She's more than that. She has something money cannot buy. His piercing eyes turned back to Maya. Compassion, loyalty, and those qualities are rarer than diamonds. Maya's throat tightened. She didn't know what to say, so she stayed silent. The rest of dinner passed in heavy silence, broken only by clinking glasses and the shuffle of servants. When the plates were finally cleared, Mr. Harrington leaned closer. I will be making some decisions soon, Maya. Decisions about the future of my estate, my businesses, my family. When that time comes, I want you to be part of it. Maya's eyes widened. Me? Yes, he said firmly. You. Evelyn's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Later that night, after the car dropped Maya home, she sat on her bed, replaying the evening in her head. She didn't understand it. Why would a man like him, one of the richest in the city, want her to be part of his decisions? Her mother listened quietly as Maya told her everything. Then, in a low voice, her mother whispered, Maya, this could be dangerous. The rich, they play games with power, and sometimes the pawns are the ones who suffer. But Maya was already too deep in thought. Part of her wanted to run away from it all, but another part, a hidden part, was curious. What if fate really had chosen her? Days later at school, Maya noticed something unsettling. A man in a dark suit stood across the street watching. He wasn't from the Harrington household. His face was unfamiliar, but his eyes followed her every move. That night, she overheard her mother speaking to someone on the phone. Yes, she's fine, but why are strangers asking about my daughter? What do they want with her? Maya's stomach knotted. She was no longer invisible. The Harrington name had marked her, and now others were noticing too. Back at the Harrington estate, Evelyn sat alone in her father's study, her hands clenched around a glass of water. This girl, she muttered under her breath. Why her? Why not us? Why not family? She remembered the way her father looked at Maya, the way he spoke of compassion and loyalty, as though those things mattered more than blood. Evelyn's eyes darkened. She knew her father well. If he was speaking like this, it meant he was planning something drastic. And Evelyn would not allow some schoolgirl to walk in and take what was rightfully hers, not without a fight. The week that followed was a blur for Maya. She tried to focus on her studies, but her mind was pulled back again and again to the Harrington mansion, to the dinner, to the billionaire's piercing gaze when he told her she was part of his decisions. Her classmates whispered constantly, fueling rumors. They say she's being adopted by him. No, she's going to inherit money. Imagine, a billionaire noticing her of all people. Maya tried to ignore them, but her own thoughts were no quieter. What did he mean? Why her? On Friday evening, a black car once again appeared outside her small apartment. This time, it wasn't Evelyn's letter or the family attorney who brought news. It was the billionaire himself. Mr. Harrington stepped out slowly, supported by a cane, but his presence still filled the narrow street like a king arriving in a forgotten village. Neighbors peered from their windows, children whispered, and Maya's mother nearly dropped the pot she was stirring when she saw him at the door. "Mr. Harrington," she gasped, This is an honor." But he raised a hand. "Please, no formalities. I came to speak with Maya." Inside the small living room, Mr. Harrington sat carefully on the worn sofa, his eyes scanning the humble surroundings. He said nothing for a while, just looked around, his fingers tracing the wooden cane. "Maya," he began at last, "I have made my decision. Tomorrow evening there will be a gathering at the estate. My family, my board members, my closest advisors, they will all be present. I will be making an announcement, and you, child, will be standing beside me." Maya's breath caught. "An announcement? About me?" "Yes," he said firmly. "It is time I show the world the kind of values I truly respect. They think wealth is measured in gold and power. I want them to see that it is measured in compassion, and you, Maya, will be the symbol of that." Her mother looked at him in disbelief. "Sir, with all respect, Maya is only a schoolgirl. She does not belong in your world." "On the contrary," Mr. Harrington replied, his eyes narrowing, "it is exactly because she doesn't belong that she must be there. Purity shines brightest when placed among shadows." The following evening, the Harrington estate glittered with light. Expensive cars lined the driveway, and men in suits moved about with stern expressions. Maya felt completely out of place in her simple dress, but Mr. Harrington insisted she stand beside him at the front of the grand hall. Guests whispered as they entered, their curious eyes darting to her. "Who's that girl? She looks out of place. Why is she here?" Evelyn stood near the corner, her glass of champagne in hand, her smile polite but her eyes like daggers fixed on Maya. When everyone had gathered, Mr. Harrington rose slowly from his chair, leaning on his cane. The room fell silent. "Friends, colleagues, family," he began, his deep voice echoing across the hall. "You all know me. You know my wealth, my empire, my achievements. But yesterday I learned something more valuable than all the riches I have built. I learned the worth of compassion." He paused, glancing at Maya, then back at the crowd. "When I collapsed in the street, people passed me by. Not one stopped, not one, except this girl." A murmur rippled through the hall. All eyes turned to Maya. Her palms grew damp, and her heart raced, but she kept her head slightly bowed. "This young girl, Maya," Mr. Harrington continued, "with nothing to her name but a school uniform and courage, did what the wealthy and powerful could not. She saved me, and for that she has earned not only my gratitude, but my trust." He raised his cane, striking it lightly against the marble floor. "From this day forward, Maya will have a place in my household. She will be under my personal protection, guided in her studies, and involved in decisions that shape the future of my estate. Consider her family." Gasps filled the room. Some clapped politely, others exchanged uneasy glances. Evelyn's smile froze on her lips, though her eyes darkened with fury. After the announcement, guests swarmed the floor, approaching Mr. Harrington with congratulations. Some glanced at Maya with forced politeness, while others ignored her entirely. She stood awkwardly, wishing the ground would swallow her whole. A man in a sharp suit leaned down to her level. "You've made quite an impression, young lady. But be careful. When you step into circles like these, you step into storms." Maya didn't understand. but the warning lingered in her ears. Later that night, Evelyn cornered her in the corridor, her smile tight. "You must feel very proud," Evelyn said, her tone sweet but laced with venom. "My father speaks of you as though you're some kind of savior." Maya shifted uncomfortably. "I didn't ask for any of this." "No," Evelyn said softly, leaning closer, "but you accepted it. Remember this, Maya. This world isn't kind, and if you stand in the wrong place, you'll be crushed." Her eyes glittered with something colder than jealousy. It was a threat. By the time Maya returned home, her head was spinning. Her mother tried to comfort her, but Maya couldn't shake Evelyn's words. The Harringtons were powerful, but they were also dangerous, and now she was caught in the middle. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking of the strange man she had seen near her school, the whispers of strangers, and now Evelyn's threat. What if this wasn't a blessing? What if helping the billionaire had dragged her into a storm she wasn't ready to face? Meanwhile, in the shadows of the Harrington estate, Evelyn sat with two men in a quiet study. "She is just a girl," one of them said. "Why should she matter?" "Because my father has chosen her," Evelyn replied, her voice sharp. "And if he trusts her more than his own blood, then she is dangerous to me. I want her watched, every step, every move. If she slips, I want to know." The men nodded, slipping out into the night. Evelyn sipped her wine, her smile returning. "If my father thinks she's family," she whispered to herself, "then I will remind him what happens to those who cross a Harrington." Back in her small bedroom, Maya turned restlessly under her blanket. She couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were already on her, watching, waiting, and deep down she knew this was only the beginning. The days after Mr. Harrington's announcement were a whirlwind. Maya's life was no longer her own. Wherever she went, whispers followed. Her classmates gawked, reporters hovered outside the school gates, and strangers began stopping her on the street. "You're the girl who saved him, right? Is it true he made you part of his family? Are you really going to inherit his fortune?" Maya's head spun. She never asked for any of this. She only wanted to help a man who had collapsed on the pavement. But now the world seemed to have rewritten her story without asking her permission. One evening, as she walked home from school, the street felt different, too quiet. Her instincts told her someone was watching. She turned and caught a shadow slipping behind a wall. Her pace quickened, her palms clammy. When she reached her building, a folded note was waiting at the door. No name, no signature, just 6 words scrawled in black ink. "Stay away from the Harringtons, or else." Her heart hammered. She shoved the note into her bag before her mother saw it, but she couldn't sleep that night. The threat looped in her head like a nightmare. The next morning, a black car pulled up outside her school. This time it wasn't security. It was Evelyn. "Maya," Evelyn called, her voice sweet but cold. "Get in, we need to talk." Inside the car, silence pressed heavy. Evelyn crossed her legs gracefully, her eyes studying Maya like a hawk. "You must feel very lucky," Evelyn said finally. "My father has given you more attention than even his own children." "I didn't ask for it," Maya replied softly. Evelyn's smile tightened. "No, but you accepted it. And in this family, what you accept comes with consequences. You are stepping into a world of wolves, Maya, and wolves do not forgive." Maya swallowed hard. "I just wanted to help him." "That's your mistake," Evelyn said sharply, her voice dropping. "Kindness has no place in this world. Power does. And if you stand in my way, I will tear you apart." The car stopped abruptly. Evelyn's door clicked open. "Think about it," she said, stepping out without looking back. That night, Maya sat with her mother, torn between fear and guilt. "Mama, maybe I should walk away," she whispered. "Maybe I should stop going to their house. It's too dangerous." Her mother took her hands, squeezing gently. "Maya, when you saved that man, you followed your heart. That was not a mistake. But every choice has a price. You must decide. Will you let fear write your story, or will you finish the one you've already started?" Maya's eyes stung with unshed tears. She wanted to run, but she knew her mother was right. The following week, Mr. Harrington summoned her again. This time, the meeting wasn't about dinner or family. It was about the future. "Maya," he said, his voice firmer than before, "you've already proven more courage than many grown men I know. But now, I need to know if you're ready for responsibility." Maya frowned. "Responsibility?" "Yes," he said. I am restructuring my estate, rewriting my will, preparing for the battles that always come when power changes hands. My daughter Evelyn believes inheritance is about blood. I believe it is about values, compassion, loyalty, courage. That is why I have chosen you." Maya froze. The weight of his words crashed down on her. Chosen me? For what? To stand as a symbol of my legacy. To remind this family that wealth means nothing without humanity. You will not be alone. I will guide you. But you must be ready to face envy, hatred, even danger. Are you? Maya hesitated. She thought of Evelyn's glare, the threat on her doorstep, the shadow that followed her. Fear clawed at her chest. But then she remembered that day on the street, the moment she knelt beside a stranger when everyone else walked away. She didn't think. She just acted. Her voice was steady when she answered, "Yes, I'm ready." News spread like wildfire. The Harrington patriarch was preparing an unprecedented move, placing a poor schoolgirl at the center of his estate plans. Some praised him, others ridiculed him. But everyone was watching. Evelyn was livid. In private, she confronted her father. "You can't be serious," she hissed. "She's nothing. She's not blood, not family." Her father's reply was calm but cutting. "Sometimes family is not who shares your blood, Evelyn. It is who shares your values." Evelyn's hands trembled. For the first time in her life, she realized she was losing, not to another tycoon, not to a rival board member, but to a schoolgirl who had done nothing but show kindness. That night, Evelyn made a call. Her voice was low, dangerous. "If my father won't remove her, then I will." The storm broke 2 nights later. Maya was walking home from the library when she noticed the same shadow behind her again. This time, it didn't stop. Heavy footsteps quickened behind her. She broke into a run, her bag bouncing against her hip. The footsteps followed. Her breath came in sharp bursts as she turned into an alley. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her arm, yanking her back. She screamed, struggling, but another voice cut through the darkness. "Enough!" A tall figure stepped out from the shadows. The Harrington driver, the same man who had first escorted her. The attackers fled into the night, leaving Maya trembling. The driver steadied her. "Miss Maya," he said urgently, "you're not safe anymore. There are people who see you as a threat. But remember, Mr. Harrington chose you for a reason. Do not give them the satisfaction of breaking you." Maya's knees buckled, but she nodded, determination burning through her fear. When she next saw Mr. Harrington, she told him everything. His jaw tightened, his eyes cold. "I warned Evelyn not to let ambition blind her," he muttered. "But if she dares cross this line, she will lose more than my trust." Maya stared at him, fear and sorrow mixing in her chest. She didn't want to be the cause of family division, but she couldn't turn back now. Weeks passed, and the city buzzed with rumors of Mr. Harrington's mystery heir. But through it all, Maya held firm. She studied harder, trained in public speaking with tutors provided by Mr. Harrington, and learned to carry herself with dignity even under scrutiny. And slowly something changed. She began to believe in herself, not as a girl who stumbled into wealth, but as someone who had earned a place by the simplest act of humanity. On a quiet afternoon, she returned once more to the Harrington mansion. Mr. Harrington was in the garden, watching the fountain. His voice was softer now, but steady. "Maya," he said, "when I leave this world, people will remember me for my empire. But I want them to remember me for more than that. I want them to remember that in the end, it was not wealth that saved me, but kindness, and that kindness was yours." Tears welled in Maya's eyes. For the first time, she understood the full weight of what had happened. A simple choice, a simple act, had rewritten not only her life, but his. That night, as Maya lay in bed, she thought of everything. The whispers, the threats, Evelyn's glare, her mother's quiet pride, and Mr. Harrington's faith in her. Her story had begun on a crowded street, where everyone walked past a man in need, and now it was far from over. Because sometimes a single act of compassion does not just change a life, it changes destiny. Subscribe to Up Stories for more story like this.